and won the Avery Prize. And she graduated. And Matthew joked with Marilla, "Now, aren't you glad we kept her?" Because, Matthew was the one who was like, "We should keep Anne." And Marilla was kind of against it at first. So Matthew got a joke there. And Lolly laughed out loud in the background when I read that bit. So that's a great thing. They talked about the bank maybe being shaky, and Matthew was like, the banker we know, we trust. He's a good guy. That's good enough for me. But as Marilla and Anne were talking, the banker himself hadn't been running things for a bit, and it was actually the nephews who were running things. And sometimes when you have the kids take over from the business, they don't necessarily do as well of a job. Plus, in situations like this where your trust is based on who is running the company, that can sometimes be problematic. Now, there is a old saying. Um, Hemingway had it about how people go bankrupt, and they go bankrupt in two ways: slowly and then suddenly. And what happens is in a case like this, it could be that the bank is not doing so well, that it had a couple of bad loans and didn't have the money. And so if a couple of bad loans happen, most banks are prepared to deal with that because, they make a little bit of profit and they use the profit to pay off any bad loans. So, they rent out money at interest and they use the interest to pay off any loans that don't, that people just can't pay back. So, if they make more bad loans than good loans, then they slowly start running out of money because the bank has money that people put into it and some of its own money. And they let out the whole big pool of money, theirs and other people's, in order to, make more loans to pay, allow people to buy houses. So when I went and bought this house, I didn't have all the money to buy the house all at once. So I went to the bank. I said, "Hey, bank, give me money." And they're like, "Okay, we'll give you the money for the house, but we want you to pay 7% interest." And I was like, "Okay, 7% interest." And so every year that I owed money to the bank, I paid a little bit of interest and a little bit of interest and a little bit of interest until eventually the entire loan was paid off. And at first, I was paying 90% interest, 95% interest. The first few payments were almost nothing but interest. And the principal slowly worked down. And then eventually the whole house was paid off. It was like, yay! It took me less than 30 years. So, anyway, so banks can fail slowly and then suddenly, just like people can go bankrupt slowly and then suddenly. So what happens is that all of a sudden, if the bank is losing money and losing money, word gets out that the bank is losing money. And so what can happen is once word gets out that the bank is losing money, people like Marilla, Miss Lynn go, "Hey, I'm not entirely sure my money is safe here." So they pull it out. And other people pull it out. And then all of a sudden the bank has people who owe them money who may or may not be able to pay, but the rules are that, they pay it back slowly, and people who want their money back. And so what can happen is something called a run on the bank, where all of a sudden everybody runs in and takes all of their money out. And the bank is like, "I have no money." And this is one of the big uh, plot points in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, where there was a run on the bank. And so all of the people went into the bank and said, "Give us our money," because the stock market crashed and there were runs on banks all over the country. It was a really bad time. So anyway, everyone went into the bank and said, "Give us your money." And the bank went to the savings and loan and said, "Hey, you owe us money. Pay us now." So Uncle George gave the money to the bank, And then everyone came in. It's like, hey, there's a run on the bank. I want my money. And they didn't have. Oh, sorry, not Uncle George. Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy gave away the money. And then George comes in. He's like, okay, we'll just deal with this. The deal is that you ask for your money now, and I give it to you in 30 days because that's what you signed up for. Because, I loan it so people can build houses. And everyone was like, I want my money. Potter's paying 20 cents on the dollar. 20 cents is better than nothing. And it's like, not much better than nothing. And then Mary says, hey, we have cash, wedding fund. And so people didn't get back all of their money right away, but they got back enough to stop the panic. So it's like, okay, how much money do you need for the next week? Because, the bank's going to reopen in a week. And everyone's like, $20, $15, $8.25. And George was just thrilled with the $8.25 that he gave the woman a big kiss on the cheek. He's like, thank you. And they managed to end the day with, $2. And they shut up the bank. And then the government president said, all banks are closed for the next week until all of this gets sorted out and people stop panicking. And, panicking is stupid because the guy who said, Mr. Potter is guaranteeing 20 cents on the dollar. Well, guess what? George would have paid him the full dollar over the course of a few months. And Mr. Potter paid him 20 cents and made 80 cents profit. So, panic. Don't, I say it again and again, don't panic. Now, the end of the chapter is kind of worrying. And it talks about grief coming to Anne's life. And it talks about sanctifying it. Now, sanctifying is a cool word. And it means to make holy. So this seems to say that, a life that's just happiness unmixed with any sadness or grief isn't really a good, perfect life. Anyway, we'll see what that grief is. Matthew was looking poorly. Marilla was looking poorly. Who knows? Gilbert's off gallivanting someplace, so, maybe he gets hit by a bus. Well, not a bus, train. They had trains. They didn't have buses, but carts, horse-drawn carts. Anyway, we'll see what happens in the next chapter.